maybe we shouldn't do this. And he says, no, if that's what you want, we're going to do it. But I promise you, look, just like it's the summer now in Israel, it never rains in the summer. Rain comes down, it ruins the wheat and the barley, they get moldy. He said, now I'm going to make it rain in order to prove to you that this is a terrible thing. Well, it's not a very happy introduction to the life and times of Shaul Hamelekh. But this is basically what happens. People put pressure on Shemuel. He says, okay, beseder, there's a mitzvah. I'm going to fulfill the mitzvah. I'm going to acquiesce to your request to appoint a king. And he appoints Shaul. No machloket by Shaul. We don't find anybody who said, this is unfortunate. We had someone more qualified, more talented, more spiritual, more accomplished. Shaul Hamelekh was a tzaddik.
Sure, I don't get something. You say the mitzvah to appoint a king was before the people existed, even before the people asked for it?
Oh, it's a mitzvah Torah.
So why? So you're saying like
it sounds like from Shemuel Hanavi's reaction, because his reaction is violent. When they tell him they want a king, he goes out and he says, "This is the beginning of the end. This king is going to cause avodah zarah. You're going to deviate from what Hashem wants."
Even if the
So apparently, we need to understand from this. Apparently, it's a mitzvah that's if you want to appoint a king the way the goyim have one, then you can, and he has to meet these requirements. But it's not a mitzvah of you must do this, but it's a mitzvah that if already you're going to do this, here's how you do it. Right? So the Torah tells you can eat meat. Do you have to? Not necessarily Kurban Pesach, yes. If you want to eat meat, you have to meet certain conditions, you have to do certain things. You can take the Gidan Hashem has to come out, the animal has to be slaughtered, etc. So at the first reading of this pasuk, you don't come out with the conclusion that you shouldn't have a king, it's bid'avad, just trust Hashem, everything's going to be okay. And our response is, no, if this is the way it is, why is Shemuel so angry about this? We didn't have Haftarah, you see the way he's irate, this is terrible, it's the beginning of the end. So the reason we did Sefer Shoftim before we started, this is the chronology of things, is that people were on a very, very, very low spiritual level. They had very low expectations of themselves, spiritually speaking. And he says, if the king is straight and he does what Hashem wants him to do, it's a good positive thing. And if he's not so straight and it's a bad thing, then he'll take everybody off a cliff. He'll basically cause a national disaster. And then the nation gets scared. They said, okay, maybe it's a bad thing that we're doing. He says, no, it is a bad thing, but you asked for it, so you're going to get it. Okay. We have such an expression in the Gemara, if you choose to go a certain way, you'll often invoke the help of the non-physical world in getting where it is that you plan to go. Who cares? What does that teach me? What does that mean to me? Why do I care? So I want to go this way. I'll be accompanied. I'll be walked down the path that I choose. What's that supposed to mean? What's the only conclusion you can draw from such a statement in the Gemara? However a person wants to go, he's walked down this path. He's accompanied down this path.
Once you have decided that you want to do something and you begin to put the effort, maybe you lost a bit your free will. At some point there is...
So first of all, for sure, you ceded a little bit of your free will because you've already made a decision, and the decision has consequences. But I'm looking for something much more powerful than this. When Chazal give you a statement like this, whatever path you want to go down, you're going to be accompanied, what they're basically telling you is you can't use resistance as an indication of you're doing the right or wrong thing. So if I say to myself, Tov, I'm going to go to this party, and if it's a bad party, Hashem's going to stop me at the door. And if what people are drinking there is bad for me, then Hashem's going to cause my cup to spill, and he's going to cause the bottles to explode. It doesn't work this way. You can't point at a situation and say, if this succeeds, it's because Hashem wanted it to. Or if it fails, it's because Hashem didn't want it to. It's exactly what Chazal are telling you. The nation decides they want to do this. And they try to back up, and he says, no, that's what you decided, this is where you want to be. Okay, you'll have a king, you'll appoint him. Now you depend on him. If he's good, he takes you to a good place. If he's bad, everybody loses. And so even if you want to have a king, the way Shemuel Hanavi understands the pasuk, he has to have a Sefer Torah, he has to carry it with him all the time, he can't have too many wives, can't have too many horses, he's not allowed to bring the nation back to Egypt, etc. So Shaul Hamelekh was chosen as the king, and he's a very interesting choice. First of all, no one opposes this. No one asks any questions why Shaul, he's not qualified, he's not learned, he was a tzaddik. he was a tzaddik. We started talking about this a little bit last week. There was one component to Shaul Hamelech's nefesh that made it very difficult for him to remain the king. In that he was a little bit extreme in his personality and found it difficult to back down. Once he decided he's going to do something, he finds it difficult to back out, difficult to apologize, difficult to say I made a mistake. So he accomplished.
You said there was an example?
In Shaul Hamelech's life.
Yeah, of that.
Yeah, well, actually we spoke about Pilegesh Bagivah last week, which was an interesting segue into this concept because that was Shevet Binyamin. That's the Shevet that he's from. An example of this would be, well, the classic example would be the war with Amalek and the expectation that he should kill Agag. He can't bring himself to do it, which is a weakness. So you had, how many mitzvot? The expectation was you destroy Amalek, build Beit HaMikdash, and then you or someone else will be crowned as Melech HaMashiach. He's already been anointed, he's already been appointed as the king. All he needs to do, destroy Amalek, build Beit HaMikdash. No reason it couldn't happen. He couldn't bring himself to do it, and at the same time he had a very difficult time backing down. So Shemuel confronts him with it. He goes out to war, he comes back. Shemuel wakes up in the middle of the night. He gets this, disaster, like those bad weather alerts. You get them, I get them on my cell phone. They make this very irritating noise and they wake you up. Why? Because there's thunder outside. Okay, so this is like a disaster. You have to wake me up in the middle of the night. In terms of Nevuah, the Shemuel wakes up with a horrible feeling. Something went wrong. I sent him out to destroy Amalek, he couldn't do it. And Shaul comes back. And the discussion between them is very telling because Shemuel first of all comes out to see him. And so Shaul is all proud of himself. Here, you see, I did what Hashem told me to. And Shemuel says to him, what's the voice of these lambs that I hear? Weren't you supposed to kill Agag and all of the lambs? And why is he here? Why is he walking? So he says, no, I was afraid. The nation was going to think, people were going to say, I was too cruel. And so Shemuel actually gives him a very powerful rebuke, very powerful musar, and he says to him, so you didn't do what you were supposed to, why? And he answers the question because you think you're small. Not out of gava, not out of pride, like I think this is how it's supposed to be, I'm doing whatever I want. On the contrary, the fact that you care what people think more than what Hashem told you to do, or more than what I told you to do in the name of Hashem, is in fact a fatal flaw. You can't repair this. So he tells him, you had a chance and you lost it. He wasn't going to get a second chance. The Shmuel is very clear about this. No teshuvah that he does is going to help. His teshuvah is going to get atonement. He'll be forgiven for the mistake that he made. But as far as being a king, he's done. He tells him in the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu very explicitly, because you were disgusted by the mitzvah of Hashem. It's disgusting to kill the animals of Amalek. Hashem told you to. You can't do it for whatever reason. You're too weak to be the king. You care too much what people think. Right? Very telling as far as the politics of this generation and how people conduct themselves and how public officers make their decisions. People care about nothing but what people think. There are very few people in the world that can actually make a decision and have the breath. They can hold their breath long enough to wait for things to happen and to get credit for doing the right thing. People put pressure, do it now, make the decision, etc. And everyone's concerned what people are going to say. Talk about current events and why the roads are all blocked today. But we can get into this some other time. Obviously, people had their minds made up as to what has to happen, and they were very disappointed it didn't happen this way. So, Shaul Hamelekh has a bit of a tendency to extremes. Shevet Binyamin seems to display this. Pilegesh Bagivah is incomprehensible. How they defend the perpetrators of this terrible crime, how they go to war. They killed 40-something thousand men over the course of a couple of days. Shevet Binyamin has a bit of a tendency towards extremes. Seems to be the way a bit of their character. We don't see much of Binyamin in the Chumash, so it's a little bit hard to say, spiritually speaking, where these genes originate and how they get passed down. He was too young to be involved with Yosef, and by the time Yosef is reunited with him, he loves him. There's an outpouring of affection, but he doesn't talk much. We don't know all that much about him. Come Pilegesh Bagivah, it's a massive disaster. And then at the same time, this is the tribe from whom the first king is chosen. So there has to be something to it. There has to be something about it. I guess a certain degree of stubbornness, of obstinance, is very helpful when you're trying to make decisions in the public interest. In his particular case, he was just too sensitive to the public, what people thought. Very powerfully contrasted by David HaMelech. not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but David HaMelech, generally speaking, could pretty much care less what people think of him and what he's doing. In other words, he has no problem, on the one hand, doing what he thinks is right. At the same time, he has no problem apologizing. He's not bothered by having to apologize and say, I'm sorry. He doesn't think, oh, if I apologize, they're going to think that I'm weak. No, on the contrary. Something says, okay, I made a mistake, I apologize. On a few instances that he didn't, he was punished, but he's pretty quick to come to this conclusion. Shaul, you don't find him apologizing. You just don't. Not by Amalek. Then when he went on a tear, he went on a complete and total tear. He didn't want to hear it, not from Shemuel HaNavi, not from anyone. He decided he's the king. He doesn't accept this fact that he was deposed. And he fights this to the day he dies. He died believing there's no way this is going to change, no way it can be. So he went a little bit extreme. If you hold by Shemuel HaNavi, he's the one who anointed you. How do you justify ignoring him when it's no longer pleasant, when it doesn't serve your purposes any longer? Which is terrible. He goes so far, in fact, after Shemuel passes away, he conjures up his spirit with Ba'alat Ov, because I guess it was really important for him to see. Maybe Shemuel only opposed me because he was wrong with the Nevuah. Now that he passed away, maybe his neshama feels a little bit differently, and he doesn't get any such answer, though he tried. So Shaul HaMelech is described in the Tanakh itself as, first of all, Mishichmo V'ma'a. He's described as being a tall, strong man. Literally, he's like head and shoulders. Mishichmo V'ma'a literally means from his shoulders and up. They use this very commonly in modern Hebrew, I think, not always in context, but what it means is that he was head and shoulders above everyone else. Like he was tall, he was impressive. We'll talk about this in the second half of the shiur tonight. The expectations of a dayan or a rab. The Gemara makes some very interesting comments on this. That there is some kind of physical aspect to people who occupy positions of prominence. So he was a very accomplished soldier. He was physically a very attractive man. Ask me why we care. Apparently, it's important to a certain degree. I don't know, but that's how he's described. And the Gemara says in several places, the Midrashim talk about this too, that he was more accomplished than David. It says it. That's it. So you would think David must have been a bigger tzaddik. He must have spent more time learning. Why? Because he can apologize. The right conclusion is actually that although Shaul may have technically known more, or may have technically accomplished more in mitzvot, at the end of the day, David had this one crucial component that was so much more important than that. That's the ability to back down, the ability to admit that you made a mistake, the humility to say, "So I thought this, I found out that, and it's okay. Life doesn't come to an end at this particular point." But unfortunately for Shaul, he really went all the way to the end. He refused. He pushed everything to the hilt. He refused to give in, refused to give up. In this process, he ended up destroying Nov, the city of Kohanim that had supported David and gave him a place to stay while he was hiding from Shaul. He spent half his life, probably more than half his life, hiding from Shaul and his soldiers. I have several Mizmorei Tehillim that were written during this time where he's hiding from Shaul. One of them is praise, a song of thanks that he writes to Hashem for having saved him so many times. When he was hiding in the cave from Shaul's soldiers, and he spent a lot of his life running, but he doesn't give up. And Shaul, even when David encounters him, famous encounter they had in a cave where he caught him, and he cut the corner of his tunic, basically to show him that he could have killed him if he wanted to. And this is a way of saying, look, I had you, I could have killed you if I wanted to, but I didn't. So calm down. Even then Shaul couldn't calm down. How extreme is he? Another example of this is that when he found out that Nov, the city of Kohanim, was actually in favor of David and they helped him out, he killed them. All of them. One escapee. So the Gemara points this out. This is bitterly ironic. The same Shaul who can't bring himself to kill Agag because it's cruel, in the end he can kill 120-something Kohanim because they violated, they rebelled against the man who believed he was king, even though he had already been deposed by Shemuel. This is typical of extremism. Incidentally, a little musar on this topic. Rav Ritbi always used to point this out, especially in political parties, because he was very keen, not that he got involved in politics, he used to point out the absurdity of different political movements. And one of the things that he would say is, whenever you find someone who believes in something to the extreme, generally speaking, they end up being extremely opposed to other things that should otherwise make sense. I mean, extremism yields inconsistency. Because you believe something so extremely and so deeply, it's impossible that you don't miss something, or that you lose your perspective, and end up being extremely opposed to the cause that you're trying to support. His classic example was the Turei Karta on Shalom Achshav in Israel.
Who is ShaBaSh?
ShaBaSh is one of these fanatically left-wing communist, socialist, environmentalist, etc. We're all in one. They effectively are the party that has always been pushing for the most, the biggest concessions to the Arabs. Basically, the more terrorism, the more land we should give them. And I think they've been supplanted only by Balad, Balad, which in Arabic means land, but the Brit Leumit Demokratית, as they call themselves, the international or the national democratic movement that claims the Arabs are misrepresented or underrepresented in the democracy, even though they can vote, and very few of them do, but they have such rights. So the Torah Karta, they paint themselves as the most religious, the most strictly observant, as far right, so to speak, as you can be on the religious spectrum. And how extremely caught up are they in their desire to prove to everybody that they're more religious, more frum, as they say, than everyone else. They're so religious that they hate the state of Israel, and they do everything they can in order to encourage the Arabs to occupy more of it, to get the Jews out of it, etc., which is thoroughly crazy. I mean, from top to bottom, it's crazy. And where do they find themselves in good company? I mean, who are your neighbors on the political spectrum? The most ferociously anti-religious people on the planet. People who intentionally, they walk around with signs that pork makes you more intelligent, like they're trying to push against kashrut, against circumcision, against everything. How did you end up in the same boat as these people? Because you're so fanatically extreme on certain topics, you end up, ironically, coming full circle and then being extremely lenient on other things that should otherwise be part of your political platform. So you push really hard. We spoke about this a few weeks ago, the concept of humra bari dekula. How it's impossible to be mahmir in something. It's impossible to be strict about something without creating a leniency somewhere. Maybe it's money, maybe it's in dinim benam havero, whatever it is, shlom bayit, often enough. Never forget my classic example of this was a guy. It was crazy. I mean, it was crazy from when I met him, but he was a Baal Teshuvah. He's always denigrating himself, always saying bad things about him. I used to be chiloni, did this, that, the other thing. So he was very mean to his wife and kids, but he wasn't shy about telling me that he spent like $2,500 on a pair of tefillin. I was shocked. There's nothing special about them. So fair, I can open them up and look inside. Nothing special about them. For him, the whole point was to buy a pair of tefillin that no one else could buy because I'm exclusive, because I'm the best, because I'm the biggest tzaddik there is. Meanwhile, black and white things, like how he treats his wife, how he talks to her in public, he was very weak. It was, embarrassing on more than one occasion. So whenever you decide for yourself as a huge chumrah, something you want to be very careful about, you end up losing something else. And such, unfortunately, was the life of Shaul Hamelekh. Chazal said, "Kol hamarachem ala achzorim sofo mitachzer ala rachmanim." Someone who is merciful towards someone as wicked as Agag, who's described, Shemuel HaNavi, by the way, who kills him. Shemuel HaNavi is the one who says, okay, you left him alive, now I have to kill him. 50-something year old. Pick up a sword, go ahead. Just like your sword has left so many women widowed and cost them their children, your mother should be in the same category. He cuts off his head, he doesn't even leave anything. A Navi cutting somebody's head off. What is he trying to demonstrate? What is he trying to prove? If you thought being a king was being powerful and then trying to be lenient and trying to be merciful, you're wrong. There's a time where you have to be tough. A time you have to be strict, you have to put your foot down. And if it looks funny to you that I'm a Navi, someone who's not necessarily living in the middle of town, spends his time fasting and praying and learning, and has relatively minimal interactions with people, who today in our generation would say, look at that, that's what a Navi is supposed to be. Someone who walks around cutting people's heads off. You would think Daesh, ISIS. Right? So what's the point Shemuel is trying to get across? Each and every midah has to be balanced. And here you had a tremendous failure. You disappointed HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you disappointed the nation, you let everyone down. Let me show you how it's done. I can be a Navi, I can be a leader of the nation, and I can cut his head off because he should disintegrate and never return. This is what Shaul was never able to do. I mentioned also in passing, talk about it more come time for Purim, that it's not for nothing that some of the Mefarshim, but in a very deep and impressive way, make this connection between Mordechai, Esther, and Haman. Because Haman is described in the Megillah as Haman Ha'agagi. So why does his yichus go back 13, 14 generations? Well, because there's something about Agag that's still present in Haman. And for that matter, the same players in the game, if it's Esther and Mordechai, who are both from Shevet Binyamin, according to the majority opinion, then this is just a reincarnation of the same battle. Are they going to be tough enough this time around to kill Haman? Even if he begs, even if he cries, even if he makes a case for himself, even if he has a Facebook group. Are they going to put their feet down and just squash him? That's it. And according to Tzadok Kohen Lublin, this is a big tikkun. He says, not only on our fight against Amalek, but he said the whole Shevet Binyamin had to work on this. So Shaul Hamelekh did what he did. Haman is described, his genealogy goes back as far as Agag, because that's where we made our mistake. That's where his koach comes from. And throughout the entire Megillah, he builds up this big plan. All he needs is mercy from Esther, and he can destroy the entire nation. And Esther has to learn to be cruel to someone who's cruel. Instead of being merciful and such a rasha, she has to fix what it was that Shaul left undone. But it's baffling. Shaul could kill Kohanim, and he couldn't kill Amalek. Once the perspective is obscured, you find yourself in such a situation, it's very difficult to back out. How do you justify not killing Agag? Oh, that was easy because he was the king, and killing him, maybe I would look cruel. And you don't look cruel when you mercilessly try to kill your political opponents. This isn't an act of cruelty, this is justifiable in your eyes, this is normal, it's okay. So the same thing happened in Shevet Binyamin with Pilegesh Bagivah, which is probably why these two stories are not that far apart. It's nice that you guys have unity, it's nice that you want to defend each other. This is the time to show it. You're defending rapists and murderers. This is the right way to express your affection one for the other. It's crazy. And you're willing to fight the rest of Am Yisrael to show your unity. This is totally corrupt. But they have this stubbornness, they have this insistence, this is how it's supposed to be. And so they were almost completely eradicated as a Shevet. Ironically, we needed a little bit of this koach when it came time to choose a king, but Shaul was replaced by David through no one's fault but his own. At the end of the day, he can't blame anyone for what happened. By the way, because of his relentless pursuit and his merciless treatment of his political dissidents, I don't know if you're familiar with the end of his family's story, but the Givonim that Yehoshua had made a pact with when they entered Eretz Yisrael, they were very afraid the Jews were going to kill them and take over the whole country. So the Givonim presented themselves as people they wanted to convert, they wanted to be a part of the nation. And Yehoshua says, fine, as far as we're concerned, you can become a part of the nation. And he appoints them to be Chotavei Etzim She'abei Mayim. They were lumberjacks in Bishon, and they would fetch water, they would bring water. So eventually it was supposed to be the job. They're basically doing the work for the Kohanim, because every day on the Mizbeach they had to put wood in order to burn the korbanot. They needed water for Beit HaMikdash as well. So the Mishkan, which was already in use at the time, depended heavily on what they were doing. When Shaul killed the city of Kohanim, he killed Nov, and basically the Givonim were very upset about being out of a job. They're out of a parnasah. So they later asked David if they can take revenge from his sons. And he asked them what it was that they wanted. They told him they wanted to kill 7 of Shaul's sons, and basically to hang them as an act of revenge. And so David HaMelech asked by way of the Urim and Tumim if this is something that Hashem approves of. The response was yes. Apparently his sons had the punishment coming to them for some other reason. And from that day on, David HaMelech made a very interesting gzirah. He said that there are 3 simanim, 3 spiritual genes that the Jewish nation has: Bashanim, Rahmanim, Gomlei Chasadim. And anyone who doesn't have these signs is suspected of being either not Jewish altogether or a mamzer, like there's something wrong with his yichus. Bashanim, Rashi explains that not that they're Bashanim like they're timid or shy. Bashanim, Rashi explains, mitbaishim bechetam. They're ashamed of their averot. So you find people who do averot in public, but Jews usually they're maybe discreet about it, or they're embarrassed about it when it becomes publicized. As opposed to most of the people we know in Hollywood and politics that are proud of these things. So Rahmanim, they're merciful, and because the Givonim had no mercy to them, apparently this was like a litmus test. They converted, but they apparently failed to acquire neshamot in the process, because Jewish neshamot never allowed them to do this. So they killed the 7 sons of Shaul, who apparently deserved to be punished anyway. Hashem allowed it to happen. David HaMelech said, no problem. That's what you want, that's what you can do. You're all goyim as of today.
You're all what?
Goyim.
You can cancel the
He made Xerah, so apparently, Chazal said they had apparently a little bit of Avodah Zarah, this pigeon statue they used to pray to.
No, but you can cancel the conversion after it has been done. You can say now you're going because you got.
This is a famous machloket in the
This is
Halakha.
several generations after.
This is, so first of all, several generations after, it doesn't even matter. His point was that because it's true from Sefer Yoshua also. It's not they weren't poor. They weren't. They wore ripped clothing and they wore ripped shoes in order to look like they were poor and say, "We need your help. Please save us. Don't kill us." So first of all, they lied when they came to present themselves for conversion. Second of all, his point was that the conversion was never real to begin with. In other words, what he's saying is, if the conversion of your ancestors was true, it was genuine, then you at least would have acquired some rahmanut over the course of time. And because you're incapable of doing, forgiving them, of pardoning them, of having mercy, Shaul was already dead. He was killed. It's a whole question about suicide. We'll talk about that maybe next week. But in the case of Nov and the Givonim, David HaMelech said, "Fine, even if Hashem allows this to happen, I'm going to step in and make a declaration. My declaration is that you never converted to begin with. It was like limafreya, retroactively. Yes, in theory, if you converted, you're a Jew. Even if you convert, you keep Shabbatot, and then all of a sudden you stop observing, so you still have the status of a Jew who stops being observant. Guy went to yeshiva, all of a sudden decided he's not keeping the mitzvot anymore. Okay, so he's not a goy, his kids are still Jewish. In the case of the Givonim, David HaMelech made the case that these people, this was no machloket. These people are so cruel. As a group, they all agreed to do this. Their conversion is a joke. They never could have been capable of this if they had converted for real. So that was it. From this day on, no more Givonim. They were considered Gerei Arayot. Like they converted only because of the lions. They were afraid that they were attacked by lions, and they believed that it was because Am Yisrael was there that they were just going to be consumed and eradicated.
But there are many cases. I mean, okay, I get it. It's a bit quick now. There are many cases we just saw, and we will see in the TaNa where like Jews like did a lot of like. But Shlomo HaMelech, there is no issue about like his Yahadut, and like he just slaughtered a city of Kohanim. I mean, the TaNa is full of like Jews slaughtering and killing the people. I mean.
Well, in the case of we had civil wars between Malchut Yehuda and Malchut Yisrael. This happened. Malchut Yisrael was generally Rashaim. I mean, it was the majority of the Shvatim, but they were for the most part very wicked people. Shaul HaMelech attacking the city of Kohanim was something very out of character. And Chazal explained it that he had the ability to do this, and it came out backwards. He could have killed Amalek, and for whatever reason he didn't. But he has the ability to. He just takes it out on his brothers and sisters instead. In the case of Nov, it was a much more calculated revenge. Shaul's already dead. What do you want from him? Yeah, he killed Nov, the city of Kohanim. He cost you your parnasa, but he's already dead. You want to punish his children? This is befirush against the Torah. Lo yimtu avot al banim, banim lo torah avotam. You can't kill children because of what their fathers did, or fathers because of what their children did. We don't care. It doesn't matter. We have to exact vengeance. We have to have our blood. David said, no problem. You've rejected this aspect of the Torah. In fact, your cruelty probably indicates that, genetically speaking, the Geulah never really worked. I'll tell you what's interesting, but there's in Ibn Ezer, in the Shulchan Aruch, because the Gemara makes these statements, it appears in the Shulchan Aruch. If you find someone who's extremely cruel, don't marry him or his children. You have to suspect that they're either not Jewish, they're Mamzer. Like that. Azut Metzach, someone who's very insolent. People who are very disrespectful or arrogant, the rest is Ben Yichus. There's a good chance they're not even Jewish. Don't even deal with them. Who am I to say? Do I know people who are insolent? Are some of them Jewish? I mean, as far as I know. If I can walk around with a magic wand and tell everybody, you have chutzpah, there's no way you're Jewish. Just don't bother. Yeah, there would be 5 or 6 of us left. So a fascinating story. Shaul HaMelech. Unfortunately, he was a bit extreme. Not very different, by the way, from Shimshon HaGibor in many aspects. If you compare him to Shimshon, you'll find that Shimshon was also. He's never referred to as someone exceptionally learned, although he was a shofet. He did continue to judge the nation. Maybe 14 years he was a shofet. But Shimshon HaGibor was very dedicated and very committed to his purpose. He was insistent on taking revenge from the Philistines. He bent some of the rules in order to get there by marrying non-Jewish women. It was the beginning of the end. He definitely had a certain streak to him. I mean, he could be violent and used it for the most part, for doing what he was supposed to do. I mean, in the beginning, when he killed these guys that tortured his first wife, in order to get the answer to the riddle. So no, he killed 30 people in order to pay the suits and the bedspread, the sheets that he promised them. It's not so clear that was necessarily the right thing to do, but we don't find that he was punished for it. Just that you see that he was very extreme in his life and very extreme in his death. Shaul Hamelekh kind of meets the same. Actually, if you want to make a comparison even further, how did Shimshon Gibor die?
He just
No, the whole ballroom fell on him.
Oh yeah, I mean, fell on him.
he pushed
pushed the pillar.
Yeah. You're talking like one of my kids. So I was just walking and it fell, just like that. It fell.
He pushed the pillars.
Right, well, he brought it down on himself.
Right.
I mean, he pushed the pillars and he brought it down on himself. How did Shaul Hamelekh die?
I don't think he wanted to die though.
Oh, Shimshon?
Not
Yeah.
the sword.
He jumped on.
Tamot nafshim perishtim.
Oh, I
He says
thought he wanted to
explicitly.
kill them only.
Well, he wanted to kill them too. I don't think he expected to survive.
Il est mort avec son fils.
The famous expression is Tamot nafshim perishtim. May my soul expire along with the Philistines. Like if I'm going to go, at least I take them with me.
Got it.
And Shaul Hamelekh, how did he die?
Jump on the sword.
Well, he asked Doeg. It's another question. I think next week that was the topic. This concept of suicide. He asked to be killed. It's somewhere between suicide and euthanasia, because Doeg Edomi was there and he didn't kill himself, but he asked Doeg to kill him, which is, who has the responsibility for this? If someone asks me to kill him, do I have the right to kill him? We spoke about this a few weeks ago. Someone asks me to injure him, do I have the right to injure him? Not so simple, but we don't find too many criticisms of Shaul Hamelekh and the way he went. It's just that the two of them have a lot in common, except that they, they led kind of extreme lives. They didn't last very long in their positions of prominence, and they both died in pretty much an act of suicide at a time of war, no less, because Shaul Hamelekh was surrounded by enemies. But, very interesting. It's the nature of the TaNa. We're not talking about little children. We're talking about people with tremendous neshamot, with tremendous potential. But it's not always easy to keep tremendous potential under control. So you see the episodes where they were successful. Shaul Hamelekh, before he was king, there was no machloket. He was a tremendous, powerful, influential, wise, intelligent, good-looking man. And the power and the conflicts ultimately consumed him. So he came to a point where he ended up. So after all the people that he ended up killing, he ended up killing himself. He ended up having to commit suicide. So we'll take a quick, literally a 5-minute break, and we'll continue with these requirements or expectations of Dayan or of Avraham.
Là, tout c'est coming down, so I will review. On fait là?
On fait un petit break 5 minutes, après on prend la frappe.
Alors, Ouvrier,
Merci de m'accueillir, Adrien.
comment ça va la demande de Kojmit?
Bah écoute, ce matin, je suis pas allé. Je suis parti, tu sais, au petit Minyan à 7h15, juste en bas.
Ok.
À 6h30, c'est chez l'Admo.
Ah, en bas,
et en bas, c'est
les-
7h15. Ouais. Ils sont sympathiques aussi là-bas.
Mais il y a beaucoup moins de monde. Il y a moins de monde, mais c'est très grand, non? Ils font dans la grande salle ou
Non, non, la
dans la
petite.
petite salle en haut?
Ouais, la petite salle.
Very
Mais,
nice.
c'est un rituel de l'Admo. Quel kiff.
C'est un kiff, hein?
Oh, shit.
Il est là?
Ouais, il parle avec moi, je rentre avec lui là. Next Monday.
Vous êtes dans le même
Le
avion?
matin sortir.
Je pense, il m'a dit elle est là lundi. Je lui ai dit ok, parce que moi je l'ai parti lundi dernier. Alors il m'a dit pars avec moi la semaine prochaine. Alors j'ai appelé, j'ai dit est-ce que je peux changer? Et ils m'ont dit ouais pour quelques deniers, tu peux changer d'avion. C'est trop de rentrer avec l'Admo.
Il y a Thanksgiving aussi dans le.
Quoi? Ouais, j'avoue que je voulais aussi faire Thanksgiving. Léodot Lachem Imagoim Sat. Attends, les juifs ils font ça, non? Jewish.
What's the.
Journée fériée, c'est tout.
אפשר להודות
Yeah,
למה? כל העמים ביחד ככה.
Yeah, we
פעם
have to, we should
בשנה.
thank Hashem every day. That's really what we're.
It's a good minhag.
A good minhag, yeah. And again, but if there's one day of Thanksgiving, what does it imply about the rest of the year?
איך תדע עם ארצות הברית, maybe elle est comme elle est, avec sa puissance, רק בזכות Thanksgiving. יכול להיות.
You know,
It's a wonderful day.
we'll talk about this on the July 4th, maybe the week of July 4th. But you know that America is the only country in the world, that can actually say that it was founded in the name of Hashem. In the Declaration of Independence, they wrote that they believe these rights to be God-given and self-evident. I mean, on the dollar,
In God we trust.
In God we trust. So the Declaration of Independence mentions the name of God. Israel's Declaration of Independence doesn't mention it. How do you explain this? How is it possible after 2,000 years of Galut, Israel's Declaration of Independence doesn't mention Hashem anywhere? Crazy. It makes me crazy. I don't know. But the Americans that came here, the Protestants, were looking for religious. First they were British settlers, whatever. But for the most part, it was Protestants that were looking to get away from Catholic Europe. So they wanted religious liberty, and they came to the country and they founded a country based on not on Protestantism. You didn't have to be Protestant to come to America. It was a country based on tolerance. These people were very religious people. It was religious tolerance. It wasn't secular tolerance. This wasn't the French model. We can only be happy if we leave religion. That's communism. France is communist. The Maaseh, 9 out of 10 issues, they agree with the communists. So the American response is no, it's actually belief that Hashem created people, that He created them equal, that they all have inalienable rights, that makes us believe that we should, write in the Constitution that everyone has basic rights, and this is what we declare as part of our independence.
C'est qui, who is Arsat Abrut, United States? C'est pas Edom. C'est la vanne plutôt.
It's probably the better half of Edom, yeah.
Ah, c'est...
The better half of Esau.
What's the better half?
I mean, the Protestant half.
Okay.
It's hard to argue the Catholic half is the good half of Esau. It is what it is.
We don't have...
Sorry, Shalom, I didn't go. I didn't even stop at home. Do you have a Siddur?
Yeah.
So, perché non tu put something?
Tu n'as pas fait Mincha?
A Siddur with a perché in the back.
Ah, tu l'as casquette devant. Ah. Aurélien, si je savais que tu faisais rien toute la journée, il faut m'appeler moi si je fais rien.
Tu fais quoi toi?
Je fais chômage.
Ah bon?
Ouais.
Thank you for
Puis on tourne.
That's actually very funny.
On fait la capote.
There's like a whole discussion about why I couldn't find it. Why I
T'as un
was
saut
looking
comme
for
un
it.
saut.
Avec Vademont.
Johan, moi, quand tu traînes avec moi, il va kiffer.
Just don't tell her that you have it.
Pourquoi tu t'es envoyé?
Non, cette semaine.
Keep this between us.
Cette semaine, je suis off.
Comment ça se fait?
Parce qu'ils veulent pas qu'on y aille sur le.
Pour Thanksgiving?
Ah, c'est juste des questions de Zahir.
Qu'est-ce que tu vas faire pour Thanksgiving?
On n'a pas dit ça encore.
Miami, c'est bien Miami.
Ah, mais je le fais tous les ans, je peux plus.
Ouais, dommage qu'il bosse vendredi, on serait parti faire un petit tour à Miami Beach. Il paraît, il y a de la cala là-bas, en béton. On sait tout comme on aime. J'étais pas chez moi. Quand tu fais ton alia alors, je te sens chaud là. J'ai vu la petite photo du rabbi. Je sens que tu es en béton.
T'as vu le match aujourd'hui?
Le match? Ouais. Qui contre qui?
Pareil, mal avec les champions.
Bon. Je déteste Paris. J'ai jamais aimé le foot. Je n'aime ni les entraîneurs, ni les joueurs, ni les supporters. Je n'aime rien.
T'aimes que le tennis.
Ouais, d'accord, tu sais. J'aime bien le tennis, ouais.
J'aimerais bien Rafa Nadal, à savoir.
Ah, tu veux la casquette. Écoute, j'aime beaucoup, mais... Oh, cirque le foot. J'aime rien. Même les arbitres,
T'es avec la Almour lundi, hein.
Quoi?
T'es avec la Almour dans l'avion lundi.
Les rattaches à moi.
Tu lui donnes ta place en business, j'espère.
Bien, ça regarde rien. Tu m'as regardé, tu vas pas chou de moi. J'ai rien. Faut que je suis au Niel ou quoi? Je me balade dans le business.
Ah, tu nous fais quand même des allers-retours,
Ouais, je suis un bloc trop
Ils t'appellent par ton prénom, hein, les stewards dans l'avion
Je suis
maintenant.
pas marié, Harry, je suis une petite zèbre, je suis un petit loup qui se balade. Tu comprends? Quel âge t'as toi?
26.
J'ai 28 ans.
Ah, bah, tu me dis comme si tu avais.
Non, mais
Tu sais quel âge j'ai moi?
Mais Harry,
28
à
ans.
28 ans, mais non, à 28 ans, quand il n'y a pas une femme qui te tient à la maison, tu tiens pas en place, Harry.
C'est vrai.
Balade, tu sais pas où aller. Voilà, ça. Tu n'as pas une petite meuf à me présenter? 19, 20?
Ah, tu veux jeune?
Elle va avoir 28-30, mais il faut qu'elle ait des arguments.
Des arguments financiers ou des arguments.
Ah non, mais quel financier la prime? Moi je m'en fous de l'argent. Je vis d'amour et d'eau fraîche. Et en plus j'ai la carte de crédit.
Tu l'as mis comme second card holder.
C'est ça.
Non, mais c'est vrai en plus.
Because he was spending with Israeli card every 2 seconds, you know. Like, il dépensait avec sa
Tu
carte.
lis là.
Avec sa carte.
Cartonnier la big ball. Toute la journée. En plus c'est nos limites.
רובי ראש העם לא ישלם, וצדיק חונן ונותן. רובי ראש העם. טוב.
Bon, on va finir là, on est 3.
Tout est possible.
Ouais. Ah oui, avec un chouchet.
היד השם תקצר.
Rappelle, la semaine dernière, on l'a dit, mais il a dit que c'est pas ça, il faisait faire ça toute la journée, et il se lève, il est pas.
So, very interesting topic that doesn't get much listed even after.
Oui, au Bassaré.
I had meetings all day today, so I didn't have anything.
Franchement, ça va refroidir.
Don't worry. So, a very interesting topic that you're not going to find much coverage on because it's not so politically correct. Is that we spoke of Shaul Hamelekh being tall, being powerful. He was a strong soldier. He was handsome. He was apparently very wealthy as well. And believe it or not, we're told that not only are these good attributes, good characteristics, qualities for a king to possess, the Gemara Masechet Sanhedrin recommends that someone who sits on the Sanhedrin, a judge, a dayan, should possess these qualities as well. We don't appoint a dayan unless he's Ba'al Qumah. He should be tall. He should be handsome. Obviously, he should be intelligent. He should be learned. He should be, fluent in dinim and halacha. But we expect him to be wealthy. We expect him to be wise and knowledgeable. And he should be tall. And he should be impressive and good-looking. And if he's short and ugly or fat, or I don't know why this all of a sudden becomes a detriment to his ability to fulfill his duties or to perform his job. So we have a bunch of psukim that are referred to in the Gemara where we expect, for example, by the Kohen. So by the Kohen Gadol, we're told the Kohen Gadol me'echau, right? The Kohen who is bigger than his brothers. So the Torah doesn't usually refer to HaKohen HaGadol the way we use it in modern speech. HaKohen HaGadol me'echau, the Gemara says, from here the Kohen should be literally, physically bigger than his brothers. Like he should be someone bigger, someone of an impressive size and stature. Maybe there's something a little bit ironic about a little Napoleon of a Kohen Gadol who's like 4 feet tall. And it's like, don't worry, I got you guys. We'll be good. But nonetheless, it's a little bit unusual. You would expect, you would think anyway, that the Torah would look past his physical appearance and say, okay, he's wise, he's pious, he's religious, he's observant. It would be great if we had more people like him. So why not give him a chance? So I haven't seen any sources to the contrary, that if someone is wise and intelligent and has good midot, then he should be passed over for such an appointment. But it seems pretty clear from the Gemara, this is the Chatchila, this is how it's supposed to be. I understand in the case of a king. The king has to be someone wealthy, first of all, so he shouldn't be easy to bribe. Otherwise, he's very easily corrupted. As a matter of fact, I would say even this generation, as wealthy as you are, it's still easy to bribe people. Don't ask me why, I have many, many examples of this. But one of the easiest ones, Muammar Gaddafi. No offense to the Libyans or to the Italians, but Lieutenant Colonel Muammar Gaddafi had $34 billion to his name, right? $34 billion. People who knew him talked about him walking around and throwing money and watching it fall, like sleeping on piles of money, which is pretty impressive when most of your country is illiterate and poor and dying of hunger. But this is the way people are when it comes to money. So clearly the man was an Am Haaretz. He gave himself a university degree in something, but he was clearly an Am Haaretz. And he was crazy, which always helps. But having money, it's no guarantee that the king is going to be a tzaddik. It's just that much more difficult to corrupt him with money. So if he were to have to make a decision in the public interest, if money even slightly, plays a certain percentage of the decision, hopefully he should be immune to such forms of corruption. Why does he have to be physically big? So we learn from the Kohen Gadol, he has to be a Kohen Gadol me'echam, and we stretch this concept to a king as well. He should be impressive. He should be someone you see and you're impressed by him, even physically. Not only by his physical, not like the strongest guy or the tallest guy becomes the king, but that there's something to be said for him being of a somewhat impressive physical appearance. And then, believe it or not, okay, thank you. Believe it or not, we actually have an interesting quote in Pirkei Avot. In the sixth and final chapter, so a little background on Pirkei Avot. There's a discussion on the nature of Pirkei Avot. We spoke about this once a few years ago. According to some Mefarshim, Pirkei Avot appears towards the end of Seder Nezikim. Seder Nezikim is a Seder that talks about financial laws, about capital and corporal punishments, judges, witnesses, contracts, inheritance. I mean, most of the dinim that concern transactions, business dealings, borrowing, lending, etc. So there is an opinion that holds that Pirkei Avot is actually 5 chapters of Mishnah. The 6 chapters of Braitot, it's not exactly the same status of Mishnah, but we hold from them that it's these 5 or 6 chapters are instructions to Dayanim. In other words, they hold you to a very high standard. We hold by the opinion that it's for everybody. That everybody has to be pious, everybody has to be careful, everybody has to be righteous. But there is an opinion that says these are expectations for Dayanim because the expectations are pretty high. And it's impressive. People live their lives like this. So the first 5 chapters of Pirkei Avot are Mishnayot. They pretty much give you the chronology along with different teachings from each generation through which the Torah passed. And it explains how from Yehoshua to Zchirim, etc., and then generation after generation we get an insight into how they learned Torah, how they taught Torah, and the midot they were careful about. The 6th chapter is a chapter, we call it Perek Kinyan Torah. It's the chapter in which Chazal describe how the Torah is acquired, how do you become a Talmid Chacham. And we hold that these are Braitot, they're not Mishnayot. So it's a collection of teachings of the same status, from the same time period, the same Chachamim, but it wasn't canonized, if you will, as official Mishnayot. Nonetheless, we don't hold that it has a different status in any way. Whole discussion about how we learn Torah, how important it is, the different ways in which Torah is acquired. And then I'm in the 6th chapter, in the 5th Mishnah. Rabbi Shimon ben Menaseh Omer, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, you've heard that name before. Hanoi, v'akoach, v'aosher, v'akavod, v'achochma, v'azikna, v'aseva, v'abanim, na'el ha'tzadikim, v'na'el ha'olam. שנאמר, עטרת תפארת צבא בדרך צדקה תימצא, ואומר, עטרת חכמים עושרם, ועטרת זקנים בנים בנים, ותפארת בנים אבותם. A whole bunch of psukim that basically describe midot, characteristics that are great for tzaddikim. So what's great for tzaddikim? According to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, quoted by Rabbi Shimon ben Menaseh, Noi means what in Hebrew? Noi, Noah.
Beauty.
Beauty, physical beauty. Koach means what?
Strength.
What kind of strength?
Physical strength.
I mean, it sounds like physical strength. Doesn't sound like it's spiritual strength anyway. Osher means what?
Wealth.
Money.
And it sounds like we're building up to what here? Like, what are you expecting this person that we're describing, like Mr. Potato Head, we're putting all these pieces together?
An actor.
You're expecting what? An actor?
Yeah.
A politician? Barminan? Something along these lines. So, beauty, strength, wealth, kavod. Kavod means what?
Respect.
Really, and this is what every tzaddik is supposed to be running after, supposed to be looking for, is to be expecting. V'achochma, fair enough, at least wisdom appears here. V'azikna, zikna is what?
Wisdom.
Zikna.
Old age, right?
Old age, right. Technically old age, just being old
Okay.
is already a bracha. It's assumed we're talking about tzaddikim, we'll get to this in a second. Hazikna, v'aseva, right? Seva, it's also usually relates to old age, except here it sounds to imply more along the lines of like experience. You stand up in the presence of someone who's older than you, not because they're only physically older than you, but because there's also something to be said for the experience they've acquired over their life, and hopefully the wisdom that they've drawn from it. We have banim, right? Banim means what? Children. It's one of these things that are in the category of na'el tzadikim v'na'el ha'olam. It's beautiful to see tzadikim with these things, and it's beautiful for the world. So this isn't necessarily the wish list I would have put together for, you ask me how much Melech HaMashiach is supposed to be described, they're the first things that come to my mind. You have to be tall, you have to be handsome, you have to be rich, you have to be successful. Sounds like a girl in high school describing her white knight in shining armor. So why on earth does this Mishnah have any place here? Out of all places, don't tell me that it's coming from a doubtful source. And Shimon Bar Yochai has pretty broad shoulders when it comes to these things. So this is very very unusual. It's a little bit difficult for us to understand. So the reality is that very often we have this impression that tzaddikim or dayanim or rabbanim are supposed to be very sweet, very friendly people who don't offend or insult anyone, don't do anything, don't cut people's heads off. That's a big one. Most people expect that in an interview. And that they pretty much leave people alone and let them be. The reality is that most of the Torah that we have, and most of the Torah that we practice and we learn and we continue to teach, was very heavily influenced by Rabbanim that were very brave and very courageous and very influential, and who had the ability not only to learn and teach Torah, but to insist on certain things, to make decrees, to make edicts, and to make them stick. And if you want to be able to make a psak and have it respected and observed, it's nice not only to have learned lots of Torah, it also helps to have a little bit of koach. It helps to have a little bit of strength. Classic example, and this is mamash Einad Yomah. We had this protest on Sunday that I was unable to attend, but there's a guy on the Upper West Side, apparently there's at least a few guys on the Upper West Side, refused to give his wife a
Saudi guy.
Yeah, I know, I was surprised. I've never seen the guy.
Moroccans.
Yeah, well, I've had my experience with Batidin, and unfortunately the Moroccans are represented
Is it
in this community of crazy men who,
Is it really a mitzvah to go there and make him and like make him busha?
Okay, so my answer to your question is what I was going to tell you in the first place, which is what? The Gemara is pretty clear when it comes to halacha requiring a get being given, and basically the Gemara says like this: there's a few categories. There's a category of husband and wife that are not allowed to be together anymore. Let's say infidelity, situations like this where it's clear. He gives, and what's the solution? He gives a get. Maybe without a ketubah, he doesn't pay her, but it doesn't matter. He gives a get. It's a sur, you guys can't be together. Then there's a situation where one of them wants to, the other one doesn't. So you can come to the conclusion if either he or she is disgusted with the relationship, literally in Aramaic, ma'is alai. Ma'is like mouse. Mouse, the German word for mouse, right? M-A-U-S, mouse. So, if a woman says, ma'is alai, he's disgusting to me, either because of his job or because of his personal hygiene or whatever, she's not obligated to stay with the guy. She can go to a big thing and say, this guy's nasty, I don't want to be married to him, and I'm out. So, the Gemara says like this: any place that Hazal said, kofin, in other words, that we force him to give a get, there's easily a dozen examples of this. Kofin afilu b'shotin. That means if we need to, we whip him. When the halacha requires you to give a get, either because you have to, like you're not allowed to be married anymore, or God forbid, a situation of infertility or something else where they decide they want to move on. So the get has to be given. If it has to be given, either midarabanan or midoraita, we force him to give it. And as force him to give it means we can even